Welcome to The Girlfriend God, a podcast in search of and in service to the divine feminine, bringing you an equal mix of academic research and emotional spiritual experience. If you enjoy this podcast, be sure to subscribe, follow, rate it, review it, and share it with your friends. Now, together, let's find the divine. Welcome to episode 46 of The Girlfriend God, Healing the Soul with the Akashic Records with Dawn Marian. Dawn is a spiritual teacher, intuitive healer, awakening activist, and founder of the Radiant Heart School Akashic Records Academy. She specializes in accessing soul wisdom and profound healing from the Akashic Records and training soul seekers how to channel their own Akashic Records for daily guidance, wisdom, and healing. Dawn's diverse background includes, I'm going to mispronounce this, Dawn, Usui?
Usui. Mm-hmm.
Okay, Reiki master teacher, Akashic Records trainer and consultant, holographic healing, emotional freedom technique, matrix energies, meditation, chakra healing, and crystal therapy. She holds a Doctor of Divinity and Master of Metaphysics from the University of Sedona and a university degree in fine art. Dawn's spiritual journey began at the age of 19 when she was excommunicated from a mainstream cult and began the process of healing and finding her way home to herself. No stranger to the awakening and healing process, her mission is to help you tune in to your purpose, activate your soul gifts, and claim your magnificence. And Dawn, everywhere online that people can find you, and the free gift that you provided me with for Girlfriend God listeners, all of that will be in the show notes. Welcome to the show. I'm really happy to have you here.
Thank you. I'm so honored to be here and very excited today.
So, you never know who's listening or what their level of knowledge is. So, what's the elevator pitch when people ask you what the Akashic Records are?
The Akashic Records are the recordings of the universe, the multiverse, and essentially of our soul. So everything actually has an Akashic record. Plants, animals, this planet, stars, even to the finest things, a flower, for example. But when we talk about it, we focus mainly on our individual Akashic records, which are part of a collective Akashic record. And then, of course, if you think about the way a library functions, they're housed in the greater library of the Akashic records. It is a holographic field, so it is multidimensional and it contains all of the wisdom of the universe. Akashic records were created when the first waves of creation occurred. So in more of an esoteric way, which I think is how people first bump into this idea that there's like this sacred universal library.
Right.
That was actually created to record everything that happened to the Akasha, which is a Sanskrit word that loosely translated means the stuff that everything is made out of. And we have in quantum physics, we have this idea of the Akashic field, which is this field of pure potential and possibility. It is existing in a formless state, and what gives the Akashic, the Akasha in the Akashic field of form is actually consciousness. And so as souls, when we individuated from source, we became our own consciousness. And so it's really, so those recordings of what your soul has been up to since the moment you individuated from source. So that's a lot of big stuff to talk about some of the things that we're already familiar with, like this idea that we're all one, that we all come from this first sort of primal energy, the source energy, and being able to work with this energy, of course, like it's so huge, it's multifaceted. There's so many different ways that you can come at it. But it's really its real focus right now is on helping all of us remember the truth of who we are, because in this life, there's a lot of illusion, a lot of
Right.
you're not enough. There's the separation idea that we're separate from each other, from source, and primarily from ourselves to our own heart.
Right.
So the kind of the focus of the Akashic Records at this time is really to help all of us come home to ourselves and remember who we are. And the magic happens when we can do that, because that puts us on path with our in direct alignment with our soul path, with our um, relationships that we're here to have with our soul family, things like that. And it provides some really beautiful insight for some of the challenges that we have experienced too, and how to alchemize those into the wisdom that our souls were really intending to have when we came to this earth.
Right. I have a couple questions, but first I just want to say, so some of the people that I listen to, or people that I have conversations with, have been talking a lot about like where we are now is at the precipice of that shift, moving out of the illusion of this separation consciousness that we have been stuck in for, I don't even know how long we've been stuck here, a long fucking time, right?
Right. Too long.
And I heard someone say, somebody that I follow online, she said, we're moving into who am I and out of who do I need to be to survive this,
Mhm. Right.
which I think is very well said. So the Akashic records are not just a record of this lifetime, right? I mean, part
Right.
of the wisdom is based on the fact that, or the fact that I believe, which is that we are eternal.
Mhm.
There may have been a beginning, but there isn't necessarily an end. So do the Akashic records stop in this moment, or do they contain information about the future?
Bleh.
Is that a complicated question?
Right.
Well,
Both.
because I mean,
Okay.
some people think, right, everything that's happening has already happened and will happen again, because time isn't linear.
Right. Right. It's the ever present now, and it's
Right,
very holographic. And so there's different ways to talk about this. So the first thing is there is no time or space. That is more of a human construct that we use
right,
to sort of try to make sense of this awesome, mind-boggling experience that we're having.
right,
And in all of kind of understanding or trying to wrap your brain around what the Akashic records are opens up this amazing portal into some really profound healing and wisdom and insight, because it is true we've had so many past lives. People are often amazed when I teach Akashic records, and people ask like how many lifetimes I've had. It's not uncommon for someone to receive, between 5 and 800 just on this planet.
right,
And if you think about all the other things, which is a really juicy question to me, I love this one. What has your soul been up to for millennia? Like
right, right,
what do you love? What do you continue to come back to as a theme? Or what are some of those lessons that you really dug into to master? And people have an idea, like with the Book of Life, which is another way to talk about the Akashic records, that everything is been scripted, like it's all there. And that can open up to kind of a real fatalist, powerless view of life, because it's like, well, what's the point if everything's already been scripted? But one of the key things about our experience as a soul is that we have free will. So in the Akashic records, when they're talking about the future, it is really sort of in the context of future potential and possibility, should things continue on this particular trajectory. Because in any given moment, we have a myriad of choices that we can take.
Right.
right? You can wake up in the morning and you can decide that, you're gonna shut your alarm clock off and stay in bed and be pissy, and you see if you have like a whole bunch of days of those, what that does to your life. And on the other side, maybe you just get up and you're saying, I'm so grateful I'm alive, I'm going to make the best of today. And there's this huge spectrum that we're always working with vibrationally, energetically, with our choices. So when they talk about the future, they tend to give you like the kind of the high scenario, and then like, oh, but if you're maybe not where you need to be, like this is where this is going to go, right? So that you have enough information in that moment to make a choice about what you want to do next. So it's
Right.
actually really, really rare in the Akashic Records that they tell you what to do.
Right.
It's like they want to give you all of the pieces of the puzzle so that you can step into your power and make a choice for yourself.
Right.
There are some things that are a little more scripted than others, if you will, and that opens up that concept of contracts. Like we have contracts with other souls, like to be their mother or perhaps to be in a relationship, but still within all of that, there is free will. So the Akashic Record Keepers have talked about contracts to think of them as sort of like agreements. Like,
Right.
hey, we're going to be on Earth together at the same time. And if everything works out, we're going to get together and we're going to have a relationship, or we're going to have a child, that a child's going to come in. But at any given time, that other soul can say, I don't know if that really serves me anymore. And this is a dicey one that will come up in a lot of readings sometimes, is because people will have a sense like I have a contract with this other person and like they're not showing up or they're afraid. And it's like, but the contract, but the contract. And
That
it
was
can,
that was exactly my experience and why I got my first Akashic Records reading.
yeah,
So
I've had it happen personally. I've done that reading probably 100 times. And one of the things to recognize is that our primary contract is always with ourselves. So if you
right.
are in that place, understanding that if it's your purpose to experience a specific energy, then that will be dominant. And if like somebody doesn't come in to do it, another person will. Right? Like if it's your purpose to experience what it's like to be unconditionally loved in a romantic relationship, and the individual who said, yes, I will do that, does not do it. If you stay open to that energy, another soul who can do it will say yes and step in.
Right. Right.
And so we never really ever lose, because again, it's like we have forever to figure all this out, right? Because we're eternal beings. And so we're really working with energy more than people, but that also opens up all of the karma, the conversations around karma too.
Right. Right. I feel like people often have a misunderstanding of what karma actually is because, like, I talk about burning off karmic debt, not necessarily from this lifetime. That's the piece that people miss. People think karma is all about, well, that person fucked me over, so in the future they're going to get fucked over. You know what I mean?
Right.
The
Yeah.
mentality is all about people get what's coming to them. And I don't think karma is like that at all. I don't think
Yeah.
that's what it means. I think if you read about like the Buddhist concepts of karma, and yeah, it's a totally different, much larger, and perhaps more abstract than I think people realize when people kind of toss that word around, and I get a little irritated.
Yeah.
I don't like it when people misuse concepts,
Yeah. The record
but they
keepers,
don't know. I
they
mean,
don't.
they just
They
don't know.
don't. And then things catch, fire, like karma's a bitch, and then here we go, right? Like then it's on TikTok,
Right, right.
and it's this big idea. And I think for me, like just as we're talking about the frustration points, like this whole like twin flame thing
Mm.
that is so hot right now. And people are like, I think they're my twin flame. And it's like, it is so incredibly rare for twin flames to incarnate at the same time on the planet. Usually they are always, one is Earth, on Earth, and another is elsewhere.
Right,
And what they're calling a twin flame is really a soulmate type relationship that
right. Which isn't necessarily always a good thing.
soulmates are not always good things.
I
Like
know. I
they're
know.
there to help you learn, but they're not always joyful and pleasant. They can be your most challenging situations.
Right, right.
Um, so yes, yes
So,
to that. Record keepers kind of talk about think of karma as unfinished loops. They're
right,
just energies that have been like you've sort of wanted to have an experience and didn't quite have the learning that you wanted. So you come back again to finish that loop of learning. And sometimes that karma can be with another person, like in the case of a betrayal, or a lot of times you'll see it where a soul has been really disempowered, or they've given all their energy to someone else who's
hmm
had dominion over them. So they come back in another life to actually reclaim their power and pull the energy out of that situation.
right,
That would be karma with an individual, but even within that, the karma is always primarily with yourself. Like you are the common denominator,
right,
which means that when we can heal something, because it's all holographic and very multidimensional, this life is really an end to all the lifetimes. And that's why the healing of the Akashic Records is so powerful, because obviously if you're working through like a power issue, this is not the first time.
right,
But this life has all of the information you need to heal it. So if we're just looking at like our family of origin, perhaps the romantic relationship, it's kind of like you can go through the back door a little bit, and that healing will spread out to all the other lifetimes who have the same pattern.
right,
So you can heal at a really deep soul level, which is so amazing when we can do that.
right. So I myself am a past life regression hypnotist, and I feel like there's a lot of crossover between the kind of information you can glean, how you can use it, especially to heal and gain insight about just like what, what who you are and what makes you tick and what your shortcomings are as well. People rarely want to know what their shortcomings are, but I do, right? I mean, if you're going to grow,
Right,
you got to
right,
have those.
right.
So, do you have any experience with past life regression? And do you feel that those two avenues of discovery are similar?
Yeah, I have had a past life regression, and it was such a kick because I totally agree that information that is stored in the soul's subconscious is amazing. And what I loved about it so much was it came through such a different way than
Mhm.
how I would receive it through the Akashic Records. Because one
Right,
thing about the Akashic Records is when you learn how to do it, you are learning how to channel a conversation with your Akashic Record masters and teachers, which are like those soul guides that specifically work with you throughout lifetime. So there's a conversation aspect to it. When you're in a past life regression, it's something that I would describe like a cellular memory, sort of like rises up through you. And
right,
so the texture of that experience is very different.
right,
And so for me, when I had my past life regression, it was really interesting because I think having that experience actually made me a better Akashic Records reader,
right,
because there was some different um like energetic textures and just the ways that it came through me. And so then what started happening is sometimes I would be in my records and I would have more of those like spontaneous memories versus like being told something was happening.
right.
But I think it's super valid. And I love that book. What is that book? That doctor, that therapist or psychologist who wrote that one book that opened up everyone's mind to many souls, many lives.
Right.
Dr. Brian Weiss.
And I can't think of his name. I have it on my
I
bookshelf.
Yeah, it was beautiful. And so I think again, like there's no one way to where we're all going, which is
Right.
remembering who we are and the magnificence of our soul. Um, I think it's really powerful. And I think having past life regression can be amazing when the person who's facilitating the session has a really deep understanding of those greater principles too, and can really like move into just the coming into completion with whatever is
Right, right.
wanting to be completed by the soul in that moment.
Well, and because I mean, if you go with the theology and beliefs of people like Dolores Cannon, not all of your past lives, number one, not all of them are here, and not all of them are human.
Oh yeah. That's where it gets really juicy.
Right.
I just did that with my advanced class last week, and we went into some galactic energy. It was the first time
Yeah,
that they've done that, and but it's still all connected, right?
it
We're
is. It
still
is. And
picking up themes that started in other places, spaces.
right.
Um,
And I feel like, as a collective, we are becoming more and more open to these ideas where 20 years ago it would be like, oh, that's just woo woo spirituality and it doesn't. But the more people are opening up, the more experiences they're having and the more they open up.
right.
Like, just as an example, in another arena, right? Like recently we had all these, these government hearings about the UFOs and about the aliens. If you told us that 20 years ago, people would have flipped the fuck out. Today, we're like, yeah, aliens, we kind of figured that. You know what I mean? And just went on with our day.
Right.
In just a couple decades, that paradigm shift in our belief system allowed us to, acknowledge that that was not just the crazy person with the tin foil hat. You know what I mean? Like, this is a real thing and a real possibility. And now we have evidence. And people were like, we're too busy. We don't have time for the aliens right now. you know?
Right. Yeah, there's lots of different ways we could talk about that, right? I mean, I think the media too, of just like how many shows have we had, and it just sort of seeps into like the collective consciousness.
Right,
And, media in itself, it's not bad, it's how it's used,
right,
and so we have like with this podcast, this is a beautiful way of disseminating information and energy.
right, right. Um, so a couple questions came to mind. One, well, I guess given what you do you have to have a guide or can you do it yourself? I've done it both ways. That's why I asked the question.
When you say guide, what do you mean?
I mean, like have somebody like you, uh,
Like take a class, learn how to do it?
yeah, take a class, learn how to do it, have a guide. Like that's how I did it. I went
Yeah.
to a guide. She
Hmm.
took me through a guided meditation, and then she told me kind of like it was for me, it was a similar experience to being with a medium, right? Like she was just channeling
Right.
information from my guide. Does everybody have their own personal library clerk?
More than one.
More than one. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
So is
So
it is, I guess the question is, can anybody do it and why would we pay somebody else to do it for us?
yeah, yeah, absolutely. So it's our divine birthright to know the truth of who we are. There was a time on this planet when you would come in and you would have a full memory of all of your lifetimes. And as the planet sort of fell into more separation type energy, there were veils that were put over the planet. And so when we come in, we forget essentially everything. And that's the game, right? Can you remember? That's where we get our biggest growth.
Right,
So it is available to everyone. It's not necessarily something that everyone is gravitating towards. So there's different levels with it. So the
right,
basic truths of the Akashic Records, you are love, you are a divine being, you're a creator, all of that is for everyone all the time. And the way into that energy, again, it's very there's different places with it. So sometimes Reiki healers, for example, because they're working with a symbol called Honsha Shonen, which opens up the gateway to the Akashic Records, can vibe into this really amazing, beautiful, unconditional love state, which is the Akashic Records. And I've had a lot of people come through and be like, I got there more than once, but then I knew where I was, but then I didn't know what to do. Like I
right,
didn't know how to start working with the energy that was there. So that's one way. Sometimes you can meditate in if you
Right.
can move your vibration in a particular way,
Right.
but it's not always at will. So there is the technique that I teach, that other Akashic Records teach, which is a sacred prayer, which works as a vibrational key that opens up the Akashic Records. So it's actually words channeled from the Akashic Records to go into the Akashic Records that open up the energy. And there's a process with that. And a lot of teachers who have written books have their sacred prayers in their books. And you can read all about it and they will teach you how to do it in the book. That's another viable way. What I've noticed is people still come to class and they say, I read the book and I felt something, but I didn't know, was it really happening? Right. And so there is that value to having someone who really embodies the energy, who can show you how to do it, who can give you that, like, yep, that's, keep going, and you have that confidence level. Because
Right.
usually more than anything, I think it's the confidence part that kind of throws people off of the connection. Like, am I doing it right? What's
Right.
happening? And if you don't really have a little bit of a roadmap, that can be kind of tricky. And there is a difference too between a soul who has a contract to work with their Akashic records for deep healing. So like that, developing the relationship with those masters and teachers is really part of their path versus someone who's maybe just meant to work with that energy more of just like a channeling it like in a hands-on type of session.
Mhm.
So we all have these different ways, different needs. It's not a one size fit all. So
Right.
one thing that I do notice is that people who are meant to work with the Akashic Records more deeply for their own personal transformation and learn how to channel their masters and teachers, when they hear about it or they hear just that word Akashic Records, it's like, what is that?
Mhm.
I need that. And that goes back to some of that really neat stuff around how we have agreements to work with certain teachers, for example, or we plan that I'm going to learn how to do this at some point and I'm going to heal all this stuff. So I think it's really about just trusting what you are gravitating towards,
Right.
right? And if you like try a meditation or something and it's really nice, but you still want more, then maybe the next step is something else, right?
Right.
So
Right.
you get to where you need to be.
Yeah. I mean, I find that people that do this kind of work, um, we're we're seeking either an answer to a question or often relief from pain. Pain is the touchstone of pure spiritual growth. You know what I
Right.
mean? That's what sent me into an Akashic Records reader. And from there is where I decided to become a past life regression hypnotist so that I could A, hypnotize myself, do self-hypnosis, which is possible. Um, and I think that all of these things require that, right? That's why I tell everybody, I'm like, you've been hearing about meditation your whole life. Just do it. Just
Right.
do it for 15, 20 minutes in the morning. That's it. Get up 15, 20 minutes earlier. You know what I mean? Find a
Right.
quiet space. It's not, I know people's lives are chaotic, but it's so worth it. But it is a diligent practice. Um, because being able to meditate raises your vibration. And if you can do that, then you are that much more easily hypnotized. You are that much more easily able to access, beta, theta, delta waves in your brain. And I'm just a huge advocate for meditation. And it's not always going to work. You know what I mean? I give up. If I can't get in the zone in 15 minutes, I stop. I'll try again tomorrow or later because if to continue after 15 minutes, then I'm just struggling with myself. You know what I mean? And it's a battle
Right.
that nobody's going to win, not me or me. Right. I mean, so I just give up and accept that I just can't always. Sometimes I wake up and my brain is like, oh, I'm so happy that you're awake. We have so much to talk about. You know what I mean? And I can't. And then I've given it some momentum and I just can't. I just can't. But most days I can.
Yeah. I think was it the Dalai Lama that said if you're too busy to meditate, then you need to meditate.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
So how can people, one of the things that we talked about initially when we scheduled this was how people can use the Akashic records in their spiritual growth, because so many people are searching for meaning. And it's one thing to move from separation consciousness into self-consciousness and self-awareness, but many of us, I think for the same reason, right, under this delusion that we are separate from one another, we are also seeking, or some of us are seeking, um, a god or a goddess or a deity, or I think that comes from feeling a sense of comfort, thinking something is in charge, right? Whatever that is, whether you call it, I have I have a belief which is it doesn't matter what you call it, whether you call it God or goddess or Jesus or Buddha or Allah, we're really all talking about the same thing. And that's
Mhm.
just our kind of Western obsession that has to give definition and labels to things. You know what I mean? But we're really all talking about the same thing. So that is part of what the Akashic Records is, what our ability to have a relationship with a higher power is to have a relationship with myself. And vice versa, right? To have a relationship with me is to have a relationship with some higher power. And maybe it's just us. You know what I mean? I don't know. It doesn't matter. It doesn't, I don't care. I just have to believe in something. So
Right.
how can people access the Akashic records to help them in spiritual development, which I think is what a lot of people want.
Yeah. There, I think of it like when you're in the Akashic Records, the first thing is a very heart-centered practice. And the hallmark of the Akashic Records is unconditional love, which includes neutrality, because unconditional love is very neutral. And so when we're looking at all the things our souls went up to, what we would consider good and bad,
Mhm.
right? It's all cloaked in this unconditional love that you're just having an experience, and that your divine nature is that you are pure, perfect, innocent love, always loved. And when you're in the Akashic Records, that is the dominant energy. That it's almost like I think about those pictures of the 60s of like the women sunbathing, and they'd have those mirrors out to like catch the sun on their face.
Yeah,
That's kind of what energetically the Akashic Records is up to, because every time you are in your Akashic Records, there's this beautiful channel of it actually does come as a column of light that wraps around you, that is that reflection of your divine essence, and has all of the frequencies of who you are as a unique soul. And that can be just as healing, just to be in your own true energy,
mhm,
as any kind of the work that we can do around healing. And it is a pathway. It is a direct pathway into your connection with yourself, which is the pathway into your connection with source.
right.
And if you want to, kind of branch off into like, what is my relationship with God? Or what is my relationship with this particular goddess, or any particular ascended master? You can explore that in your Akashic records,
Right.
but it will always bring you home to yourself and to your heart and to your
Right.
divine innocence. And that's what I love about it, is because it's like so big that it holds everything, and you can't, there's like no like, oh, I've reached the end of my discovery about who I am.
Right,
Like,
right,
like it never ends. And usually what happens, like you said, yeah, people don't come to visit me because they're doing great. They
right,
come to me,
right,
they want some guidance.
right,
And your personal work that you can develop when you have a routine of going into the records and continuing to explore and heal and grow, is, at some point we usually get to a place where the family of origin, the wounding, the trauma is stabilized and healed, so that we get to ask fun questions about
right,
past
right.
lives and the goddess, and and bring more of that energy through, which is actually really important for the awakening of our planet too, because there's so much divine mystery and truth and sacred wisdom teachings that seemingly have been lost. And
Right.
when we work in the Akashic Records and we're able to access that information and it becomes activated in our bodies, our souls remember it. It's sending a very strong energy out into the planet that can also help the planet return to higher levels of expression.
Right. I had another question, but it has faded away. So I guess I guess it wasn't that important. So I mean, I feel like the relationships we have, regardless of their nature, romantic relationships, familial relationships, platonic relationships, those really are the core of our lives, and our lives are about those relationships with other people and the collective, but you know, the people close to me are more immediate. And what I found in doing work in the Akashic Records, combined with past life regression after that, I had to unravel these very kind of earthly personal relationships in order to develop spiritually. Does that make sense? Like, so what sent me to the Akashic Records initially was a brief, very intense relationship that I had that lasted about 9 months that almost killed me. I mean, I mean, it was a breakup essentially. I'm married, but this was an emotional affair which I'd never had before and hopefully will not repeat. But this relationship, I mean, it was so all-consuming and gave me feelings I'd never felt about anybody before, ever. And what I discovered, number one, that was the soul contract, right? That conflict was always going to be there. And then when I started to do past life regression, this woman appeared in 3 different past lives. And one, she was my sister who got married off to a man in some distant tribe or whatever, and we were very close, and I was devastated that she was leaving. In another, she was, I was male in this past life, and she was my wife, and she died, like got thrown from a fucking horse or something, some horrible accident. And in another one, uh, I was male and she was my wife, and she died from some kind of illness. So the message that I kept getting when I would return to the Akashic Records was, yes, this woman's going to appear over and over and over again. But no matter what the circumstances are, she will always leave you. Fast forward another, you know, year or two after processing all of that and the lessons that I learned around that relationship, what I discovered as I moved forward into the goddess spirituality that I have now was that relationship was so necessary. One, because it opened me up to feelings I'd never had before that I wanted to have again. It also opened me up to feelings I'd never had before that I never want to have again. But, you know, if we focus on the positive, and I know today beyond the shadow of a doubt that I needed to be broken. I needed to have a chasm break in me that was so wide that only a goddess could fill that space. That was its purpose. And since I learned that, the moment I put that together, I was free. I was free because I had tried to break that soul contract on my own. I had, you know, I did cord cutting ceremonies and, you know, went to a shaman and, you know what I mean? I tried everything and I could not let it go. Even though she was already gone. You know, I just couldn't. But once, like I said, once I put that together, that this goddess, who I believe is my higher power source, spirit of the universe, whatever you want to call her, that is what I had been looking for. It showed up temporarily in a person, but it was so much more than that. And then that became like my life's quest, because that preoccupation with previously, before I got married, it was always romantic love. But even after I got married, I had, it was always on a quest for this best friend and somebody that I just felt really close to, in addition to my wife. I wanted the Trinity, right? Which was me, my spouse, and my best friend, my ride or die, which I don't have, by the way, because that is not my path.
Mhm.
I mean, I do. My wife is my best friend. That's something else I discovered through this kind of work, that I didn't need to look for that anywhere else. I already have it. I already have it. And that's what I learned from the goddess too, was I already have everything that I need.
Yeah.
I have no reason to feel lonely or hopeless, or I already have it. It's all already there. And I'm a law of attraction person too, which I think kind of ties into this a little bit, right? Because that's about aligning with energies and being in the receiving mode and all of those things. So I would encourage anybody to do Akashic Records work, because even if you think it's not about your spiritual path, it's always about your spiritual path, right?
Yeah, and how about like the whole path is spiritual? It's
Right,
all
right,
spiritual. We're all spirit beings having an earth experience, not the
right,
other way around. Like we're humans with, trying to have a spiritual experience. Like the whole thing is spiritual.
right, right. We're human beings. We're spiritual beings having a human experience, not human beings having a spiritual experience.
Right.
Well, and on this show, we talk a lot about, if you look at ancient history, and prehistory, the world we live in now, it's like, like the spirituality is like up here and our material world is down here. But back then, they weren't separate things.
Right.
Your physical material life was your spiritual life. And I was reading a book not that long ago, and it really put things into perspective, which was, if you look at least in the West, if you were living in the year 1000, right? You and everybody else were largely under the sway of the belief that the church knew everything, right? That the church had religious and spiritual authority, and we had these rules laid down that these things fall in the good category, these things fall in the bad category. This is good behavior, this is sinful behavior. You know what I mean? Very black and white dichotomy. And then somewhere between the year 1000 and 2000, that was stripped from us because we started to see the church and its faults, and the people in the church and their shortcomings. So we kind of sent these explorers out into the world, because for 1,000 years we had, this is our belief system. And then all of a sudden we didn't have that. So we sent people out into the world, these explorers, to the four corners of the world, to try and make sense of our existence, because we no longer had religious authority equating spiritual authority. And now it felt like we were out here on our own. And that is the journey that we've been on for the last 1,000 years. So now, because everything that's happening has already happened and will happen again, now we're coming back around to oh, there's more. There's more than the physical realm. There's more than, and getting comfortable with that we're never going to understand it all. Not in our limited human capacity. So we might as well try and be spiritually fit while we're having this human experience, because it makes life easier. Right? Because when we sent all those explorers out, they came back and said, yeah, we don't know. We don't know. We don't know how it all works. We don't know what the origin point is. We don't know
Right.
what the
Right.
stars are all about. We don't know. And we went, what the fuck? What do you mean you don't know?
Yeah.
It's just this pervasive feeling of being lost, I think, that that humanity has kind of been stuck in for the past 1,000 years.
Yeah, I think we can definitely thank religion for that.
Yeah,
And the lie of the separation that you have to go through someone else to have your connection with spirit, and
right,
that returning to your own sovereignty and knowing yourself as sovereign and being in your power and claiming your connection with yourself, your heart, with source. It's funny, I just channeled that this morning because as we were talking before we started recording, that I had that crazy dream
mhm,
with all these things. And the end point that they took me into was, I am the center of my universe.
right,
And, I do not allow other people or things to sway me off my center.
right,
And if someone doesn't love me, all I have and I need truly is my love of myself and my connection with source. That is enough to fuel me. And we're all, I think, returning to that in various degrees of awareness and practice. I mean, we can talk about these really big things, and yet, the rub is like, do you remember that in the grocery store on the freeway?
right, right,
We're all one, or you're like, we have
right,
those moments, and
right. Being spiritually fit all the time it's a lot of work. It takes a lot of effort.
yeah, yeah. I mean, truly, to be on the path of love and of heart is a full-time job because there's so many energies coming at us trying to inform us elsewise,
Right, right,
that there's the separation, and it all begins, I think, in the heart. um
right.
the coming
And
back to heart.
right. And it always comes back to us. I often say that's the paradox, right? Like, excuse me, it's not all about you,
Right.
but excuse me, it's all about you. You know what I mean? Like both things are true. It's not
Yeah,
either
yeah,
or, because I am my own source of my joy or suffering or whatever, that
yeah.
people are starting to understand that externals really don't matter. And I think there's a lot of deconstruction of beliefs that are happening, right? Like we're recognizing that, oh, this is programming from my parents' generation or just society at large, and I don't
Ancestral.
have to believe those things.
Yeah,
That's always a very profound question that I ask people is, what do you really believe?
right.
But the more important question is, why do you believe that? Do
Mhm.
you believe that because you have evidence of this? Do you believe this just because it's a loop in your head that you've been saying for so many years? You don't know how to believe that it's not true? Or, you know what I mean?
Right,
Those
right.
kind of difficult questions. So, speaking of questions, so I'm sure that you get this a lot. When I was actively practicing past life regression hypnotism, I got asked this question over and over again. The most common question for me, and I'm guessing for you, is what is my purpose?
Drum roll.
What is my
At
purpose? It's the
least
most common
60%.
question. So,
Even the people who I'm like, are you kidding me? You're asking that question. You were so obviously on your purpose.
right.
It's nuts. It's absolutely nuts. Yes, everyone wants
So,
that purpose. I ask that purpose. And when I get to do a reading with someone, I will ask that question. And I know what my purpose is. And yet I think, and back to some of this other things that you just said, like, can we make ourselves big enough to hold all of it? Like, I can hold those big emotions as they roll through. I can hold the part of me that feels separate. I can hold the greatness of who I am. It's almost like part of the coming home to yourself in the merging of the inner and the outer world is
right,
really just getting a little bit bigger. It's just coming up here and
right,
tapping into your wise self, where you have this container where you're like, oh wow, that's my really small human self, or there goes my 6-year-old feeling left out again because she didn't
right,
get called on to hold the teddy bear,
right,
like
right,
story. Like, it still comes up. I've done so much work on that, but like that is a thing, right? Like
right,
being left out. and to just be like, okay, there it is. But like I still get to choose how I'm going to respond in that moment, and I can just breathe some love to that little part of me, and I can be in the mystery that I don't know everything, and I don't know really what's going on with God or anything. Like, how could you? Like, it's a
Right.
mystery. Can we just be in that really joyful space of, well, then what I need to know can come in. Like, I can invite that in. It can inform me. It can guide me forward because you have some humility and space to
Right.
receive. Because I do believe that there is an order, there is a divine unfolding, and the more we just let go and kind of step into the flow and just the grace of all of it, the
Right.
more those energies can come forward and start to really help us, because we weren't meant to come here and suffer. It's part of our growth, but
Right.
we weren't meant to suffer our entire lives. We're meant to be the heroes of these great journeys and grow our souls and clear off some karma and help the world awaken and do our purpose and all the things. Like there's a bigger picture at play, and if we can
Right.
just relax into like there is a bigger picture and I don't know what it is, but it's okay because I'm guided. Like I think things start to open up more that way too, where those like synchronicities or things that we would say were miracles, like
Right.
that's really actually like how it's meant to work, you know.
Right. Right.
But we're
Well,
so
and
that.
I think that 9 times out of 10, when people ask that question and they say, "What's my purpose?" My first answer is always, "Your purpose is just to be.
Yeah.
Just be you. That's
The
it."
the record
Right?
keepers would
Because
say
when
it.
people ask that question, what they're usually asking is, "What can I do for a living that's going to make me enough money and I'm reasonably content?" Or what do I need to do in humanitarian efforts? How much of myself do I need to give or be of service? But all those questions have the same root question, which is how do I feel fulfilled? Right? How do I not feel the way that I feel? That's what most people want to know. And the answer to that isn't about what you do for a living or what you're giving or not giving. It's not about, renouncing all your belongings and running to the monastery. It's not, you know what I mean? Your path is your path and your purpose is to be on your path. That's it. Right? I mean, we may have callings or whatever, but I don't know. I think my beliefs about having a specific purpose have changed over the last couple years. Right?
Yeah, after, doing who knows, probably thousands of readings at this point.
Right.
Um,
Well, because that's
I
some of
would,
that old programming, right? That we are
yeah.
what we do. I mean, I had to go on disability and I can't work anymore. And I thought I was somebody that was evolved enough that that wasn't going to bother me. But you know what? So much of my identity was tied up in what I did for a living and how much money I made. And I
Yeah.
thought I wasn't that person, but I was. I was until on my path, source saw fit to say, you know what? We're going to take that away from you so you learn how to just be with yourself.
Mhm. Yeah.
It's remarkable.
I think the record keepers always say your purpose is to know that you are a creator and to know that you are love. That is kind of headlining this
Right.
whole business of incarnating and doing lifetimes, and the growth are those two things. And our our experience of that is what helps the universe continue to expand.
Right.
And within that, I will say though, for those people who are like, no, that can't just be that I just get to be, and that's the only thing to like, you know, is that souls do like to work with particular archetypes. So we
Right.
have like the healer, the leader, the teacher, the nurturer. Like there are these big archetypes that you see stamped everywhere. They're in tarot cards and then the goddesses, they're everywhere.
Right.
And so a lot of times when people are really feeling a call towards a certain something, and this is really important for all of us to remember, is that, once you're kind of tracking, like, here's this archetype or this energy I'm supposed to work with in this life that just keeps coming up over and over again, is to realize that that energy can actually take 1,000 different forms.
Right.
And purpose isn't necessarily like go start an orphanage in India, unless it
Right.
is, unless that is something that you really are going to do. But it's really to be the embodiment of that particular energy.
Right.
See that with healers all the time, because healers get in a pickle because they're like, but I don't want to have a practice. Like, I don't want to do the office and see the people and all the things, but I feel like I'm a healer. It's like, but that wisdom and that healing that you have to like put out into the world could be on a podcast. It could be in a book. It could be in the way that you parent your children, right? It could show in so many different ways. And again, when we stop making everything so finite and give it a little bit of like loosey goosey energy so that it will show itself. Because one of the things is I'm growing, and I had a really beautiful experience about a year and a half ago. I went to Peru, and I worked with the shamans and did a like week ayahuasca journey. And that was really interesting for me too, because it was similar energies that I'm used to working with, but packaged in a completely different way. And
Mm.
this whole energy of universal consciousness, that everything, like universal consciousness knows everything. We could say that is also Akasha, right? Or
Right.
Akashic records, but it was coming through in this really different way. And it was so beautiful because I really learned to just lean in and trust to the energy. Like the energy has all the information that you need all of the time,
Right.
right? If you just open up to it. And I think if we maybe, let's say we, like I put myself in that, like we choose to focus on just developing that trust and that feeling of ease, which also opens up some work, right? Because so much of us are in that fight or flight syndrome. We're still like shedding trauma patterns, and there's ancestral stuff moving through us. And
Right.
so you really do have to cultivate trust, cultivate that sense of like source has got my back, and I can trust myself and my heart, right? Because that's all been just taken away from us.
Right. I say
But
that too. I'm sorry, go ahead.
no, I was gonna say, but as we do that, then we also get to interact with like these higher levels of being that we're all seeking, right? Because that is another thing that I love. It's like we're all programmed with this little nudge inside of us for more. And I think that nudge has been manipulated by consumerism, by religion. Like, so it's taking like this desire to like grow and expand and learn, and like kind of morphing it and distorting it into like, well, you're not good enough. So then you have to keep growing, or you don't
Right.
have enough, or you have to be more. But really it's a very divinely placed mechanism in us that wants to keep, we want to fulfill ourselves. We want to become not only self-aware but embodied, right? We need to self-actualize. That's really what that nudge is when it's like working properly and we're like just paying attention to it and the flow with it.
Right.
And it's all here to help us. The records are one slice of a great big pie of
Right.
support.
Right. 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 It's
It's like,
like,
you can pick you pick what you gravitate towards.
right.
It's
Right.
all
It's
there,
because it's different for everybody.
right?
It is. It's different for everybody. Everybody's spiritual path is unique, I think, because everybody's Akashic records are unique.
Mhm.
Although, as you said, there's also a collective, right? Like this is the Akashic record of the Earth. This is the Akashic record of our planet, or the
Right.
oceans, or the mountains, or I like that you said that everything has a book, including plants and animals. I've not heard that before, which is
Oh,
kind of cool.
it's so beautiful. Like, and there's so many things that, as a teacher, as a reader, as a person, a student of the Akashic Records myself, I don't have time normally to like open up the records of a sunflower, you
Right,
But when I do, or to open up a record of a crystal, or, a body of water, it is so insanely beautiful and profound to be in that energy. Because one of the things about the natural elements, like that is that they don't have egos,
Right.
right? They just are. And the messages that you can channel from them are really, really beautiful. Yeah,
All right.
beautiful, beautiful work.
Well, I don't think I have any other questions other than the three questions that I ask all the guests. Is there anything that we didn't cover that you want to make sure people know about?
I could talk about this all day.
I get it. I
But
get
I would
that.
I would say that if you are sitting here listening to this, I had my first teacher would always say like Akashic records aren't everyone's cup of tea. And
Right.
and I'd be like, "Oh my God, like this is so amazing," right? But as with time I've learned I really do understand that. And I would say if you are kind of a little bit on the edge of your seat and you're like, "Whoa, there's something here." Just follow it because your heart will take you where you need to be. And I also wanted to underscore what you said too about, about that karmic relationship that you had with that person and you were like trying to cut the cords and doing all the things. And there are some things where like there's just no candle cord cutting ceremony that's gonna be like strong enough. And
Right.
so it's sort of like know when to outsource and get a little bit of support, right? So if yeah, my rule kind of in my own life too is like if I can't work with it consciously or doing some of the other tools I have, then it's not budging, it's time to go deep, right?
Right.
And then
Right.
there's a tool for that called the Akashic Records. So know that because we want to encourage people to be in their power and just what are you feeling? What are you gravitating towards? And then to take action on it.
Right. I have often said that, when I talk to, because I talk to a lot of people about spiritual things and a higher power and whatever your understanding of God is. And I tell them, when you hear people, you're like, oh, I wish Goddess would talk to me. And I say, she does, because everyone has had the experience of intuition at one time or another. We have all, I have yet to find a person that hasn't had an experience like when I'm driving down the road and I come to a T and I don't know which way to go. And that voice in my head says, turn right, but I turn left. And inevitably, there's a fucking accident, or there's a bridge out, or there's a
Right.
detour. And I have that moment where I go, damn it, I knew I should have gone right. That is God. That
Right.
is source. That is goddess. That is whatever you want to call it. That's what that is. That's what intuition is. It's how source speaks to me. It's how my own inner being speaks to me. And that intuition is a universal experience,
Right.
right?
I think that's one thing that a lot of people early on in the path get really kind of fuddled up by is this idea that I'm connecting with spirit and it's gonna be like Moses and the burning bush,
Right, right,
or like the goddess is going to appear to me, like, because people write about their experience, their mystical experiences, and so then we
right,
think like this is how it happens, but the truth is spirit often whispers.
right,
And to your meditation comment, creating spaces and times where we go into the silence. And if it's too much to meditate, like just forget about that word. Can you just sit and be quiet with your hands on your heart for 10 minutes? Like even
right,
that will open up some really beautiful energy because that helps us hear those whispers of spirit. And
right,
then it's just like once you get used to what they sound like, you can turn the dial up where you start to notice it a little bit more. And then
right,
it does become really clear, like, oh, I need to do this. Like
right,
it's just all part of that flow of like returning into your own center.
right, right. Okay. So have you listened to the show? Do you know what the three questions are? Did you prepare in advance?
I did listen to several episodes, but I don't think I ever got to the very end of one. So full disclosure, you'll have to just pop them on me.
Okay.
What are the three questions?
So it's fun.
I'm
This is
dying.
the fun part. It's gonna be fun. So tell me something about yourself that people who know you would be surprised to learn.
Um, how shy I am.
Okay.
Hmm.
Yeah, I would not think that.
Right. When I am in this teacher channel energy,
Hmm.
but honestly, I have regular visions of being that woman who lives in the forest with my plants and my dogs all by myself, where maybe people come every week for like a healing or something. And they
I
bring
get
me
that.
food from the village. Like,
I have that same fantasy. So
yeah, I've
I
had that
totally understand.
lifetime so many times, like the
Right,
crazy old wise woman and,
right, right.
at the edge of the forest.
So, second question, what is your current favorite television series or movie if you're not a big TV watcher?
Okay. Ooh. This is a fun question because I grew up Jehovah's Witness, and so I never watched TV. I mean, I literally watch like TV like maybe once a month or like every quarter I'll get into something. So I have a couple. I love Manifest. That whole series, Manifest, was great and a little bit over the top, but I enjoyed some of the stuff they were playing with the time travel and all of that. Um, I really love The Mandalorian and like Star Wars stuff.
Hmm.
And then I'm a huge Cobra Kai fan.
Okay. You're not the first person to mention Manifest, and I'm such a TV snob. I couldn't get past the horrible acting, so I think I only watched like two episodes, and then I was like, I just can't watch this. But like I
The
said, you're not the
Witcher,
first person who said that, so maybe I should give it another
it kind of
chance.
kept you going, and it was one of the few things I would get these full body chills. Like they did a really good job of sort of like, that's so up there.
Okay.
But I also really love watching The Witcher because I thought there were so
I love
many.
The Witcher.
it, a lot of it felt like watching a past life, like
Yeah,
been there, done that,
right, right.
kind of energy. And I enjoyed that, although I really had a hard time with the Witcher himself and his very stunted emotional capacity to communicate and his grunting. I would just be like, and I was going through a breakup at the time and like grieving, and that was sort of like also part of the person I just not, been with anymore. And when he would go like, "Ugh," I would like lose my mind.
Witcher's on his own spiritual journey.
Yeah, yeah. I was more into the female characters for that
Yeah,
for
yeah.
sure.
And finally, if your life were a movie,
Mm.
what would be the theme song on the soundtrack?
That's a hard one.
I know.
It's actually, but I do know the answer, and it is a song on one of the Buddha Bar compilations. And I don't know the name of it, but I have always thought every time I hear it, like, this is maybe not my life, but this is like my frequency.
Okay. Well, you're
Yeah.
gonna have to tell me, you're gonna have to email me and tell me what the name of it is, because I maintain a public playlist with
Oh, okay. Well, here's
all
one.
with
Here's one that I really resonate with that I can tell you off the top of my head is, and
okay.
this goes to my purpose. So it's not my life, but that song Break It Down Again by Tears for Fears,
Okay.
those lyrics could have been written like for my life purpose, 100%.
Maybe
And it
you
makes
wrote
me
maybe
cry
you wrote
every
them.
time, maybe in a past life or a future life, who knows?
Yeah, right? Still
Yeah,
want to be a rock star. Still have that dream
right.
sometimes. Although now I think it would just exhaust me. But you
That's a
never know.
really that's a really interesting energy too, when like just from an Akashic Records type, like why like the utility of a soul to incarnate is like a person that is so famous, right? Like, the Katy Perrys of the world or
Right, right.
what that soul is up to. I find that really fascinating.
That's fascinating. Huh. Well, you're gonna have to start promoting yourself to celebrities so that you can get an answer to that question.
There are a few of them that I see them and like I'm just like, I just want to hug you and just heal you and tell you it's gonna be okay. It's gonna be okay. Like,
Right. It's gonna be okay. It already is.
yeah. Well, if
Already
Katy Perry's listening, I'm here. I'm here for you, honey.
Okay, John. Well, I'm going to do that thing that Zoom does and the screen's going to go blank, but I will be in touch. And until then,
Oh,
oh,
I have one thing. Remember, we have I just wanted to say if any like I have channeled a divine feminine meditation for the listeners.
oh, is that what the free gift is?
That's what the free gift is, because one thing we didn't even talk about was how amazing it is to go in the records and learn about lifetimes where you've been in the service of a particular goddess, or that was a dominant energy you were working with was the divine feminine. And so it's a little bit of a meditation, but it's also activation. So if that is juicy to anyone, that meditation will really help just sink into that beautiful connection with the divine feminine that's not just this lifetime, but all lifetimes, so that you can feel it and know it and embody it.
Well, I'll be using that myself immediately. Because I actually learned that in a shamanic journey, which is just another tool. And I had a guide, I had a shaman guide, and I have to tell you about this vision. So the vision that I had in this shamanic journeying, I told you this pattern of needing to be special to somebody and needing to have, the one, whether that's in a platonic relationship or a romantic relationship or a goddess, right? I consider my relationship with my goddess a very personal thing. This intense need to be special. So when I did this shamanic journeying with my shaman Chris when I was in the Pittsburgh area, um, the vision that I had was standing on a beach and the goddess was there, but she wasn't saying anything. And I looked, and all of a sudden, in the water, in the ocean waves, women started coming out of the waves, all different kinds of women, all different colors, shapes, sizes, hundreds of them coming out of the water, rising up, coming out of the water, and walking towards the beach. And some of them looked familiar to ex-lovers, ex-best friends. Um, Obviously, I don't have hundreds of those, so a lot of them were unknown to me, probably from past lives. And the goddess said to me, I was what you were looking for in all of them.
Mm.
And Dawn, it changed my fucking life, that vision. And then of course, I had more of that in the Akashic Records once I got past my soul contract and past life regression. And I haven't had that in the Akashic Records, but I have had that in past life regression, being part of a goddess cult or being a priestess in the temple, or I've had those experiences. So I just wanted to share that story
Yeah.
with you because it was so cool.
One of my beautiful students went on a trip to Egypt, and she was on like a kind of a woo-woo tour of all the sacred sites, but
Mhm.
she went to a temple in Dendera, and her and another person went into this particular room, and they just found themselves walking in a very specific pattern, like this total. I get shivers just talking about it and just listening to you, because those are like the tangible experiences of there is so much more than just the daily grind.
Right.
We are so much more. And when we can tap into those energies, and that is the beauty of the records, is remembering all of you, right? Bringing it all in. So yes, I am very excited to share that with everyone, because everyone's going to have a different experience too.
That's right. That's
Yeah.
right.
Yeah. Thank you so much. We could talk
Thank
all
you.
day. Yeah, this
Yeah,
has
we
been
could.
amazing.
Unfortunately, I have some errands to run, doing my material a little day to day.
Indeed,
I
right.
did meditate this morning, so I'm pretty calm.
Good. Thank you so much for the opportunity, and
Thank
blessings
you,
to
John. And
everyone listening.
I will be in touch. And but until then, as I always say, may the peace and the love of the goddess be with you.
Thank you. And with you.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Talk soon.
Thanks for watching or listening to The Girlfriend God. Don't forget to like, rate, review, subscribe, follow, and comment. Episodes drop every Saturday morning at 8 a.m. and you can follow The Girlfriend God on social media on Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook.